Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike, and I'm thrilled you could join us today for this deep dive into something pretty crucial, I think you'd agree, building new skills.
You bet.
And we've got Sarah here to share her expertise on how to navigate this crazy, always changing world where it feels like if you snooze, you lose when it comes to learning.
It's so true. And it's interesting because it's not just about keeping up with the latest tech or whatever. It's really about personal growth, advancing your career and just overall staying engaged and confident in yourself.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean. So let's unpack that a little bit. What makes continuous learning, always trying to learn new things, so important in today's world?
Well, for one thing, the job market is seriously competitive these days.
For sure.
I mean, there are always new technologies and approaches popping up, and the skills that were in high demand even a few years ago might be totally obsolete now.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that happen myself. Remember when just knowing, basic HTML was this awesome skill, and now it's like, who doesn't know at least a little bit of HTML? It's almost as common as knowing how to use a stapler.
You got it. And if we don't adapt, we risk being left behind.
Missing out on new opportunities.
Totally. Feeling stuck in our jobs, or even worst case scenario, finding ourselves without a job at all.
So continuous learning is definitely not optional, wouldn't you say?
It's essential.
But where do we even start? How do we approach learning new things in a way that's not completely overwhelming and that'll actually help us get somewhere?
Well, the good news is there's a whole bunch of options out there. Traditional stuff like on-the-job training or going to workshops can still be really valuable.
Yeah, you're right.
You get that structured learning environment and often direct feedback from people who really know their stuff.
True. But those can be hard to fit in, with work and life and everything. Plus, sometimes they can be expensive. That's where those online platforms like Coursera or Udemy really shine, I think.
Oh, for sure.
They're super affordable, and you can learn at your own pace, which is great.
Yeah, and it's remarkable how easy it is to access knowledge now, right? I mean, you can literally learn anything from anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's not just about watching videos or taking quizzes. Some of these platforms offer interactive exercises, real-world projects, and even online communities where you can connect with other people who are learning the same things.
That community aspect is huge, I think. Learning by yourself can feel really isolating. But when you've got a group of people, even if it's just online, cheering you on and helping you through those tough spots, it makes a world of difference.
Totally. It's like having a built-in support system to keep you motivated, answer your questions, and just make sure you're staying on track.
And it's not just about those formal ways of learning either, right? Think about all the skills we pick up just by volunteering, reading articles or blog posts about our industry, going to conferences, even just spending a day shadowing someone at work can teach you a ton.
So true. It's about being proactive and recognizing that learning opportunities are everywhere.
Exactly. Just be curious, be open to new experiences, and you'll find a ton of ways to grow your skills. I actually taught myself sign language a while back, using mostly YouTube tutorials, believe it or not.
Wow, that's awesome.
It was surprisingly easy to pick up and really rewarding too.
That's a great example of how accessible learning new skills can be nowadays. You don't necessarily need a fancy degree or an expensive course. It's more about having that drive to learn and finding the right resources.
So we've talked about why continuous learning is important in some ways to go about it. But what about the actual skills, right? Which skills should we be focusing on? This is where it gets really interesting.
It definitely does. Things are changing all the time, but there are a few key areas that are probably going to be in high demand for a while.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell us, what are those in-demand skills we should be adding to our toolkit for the future?
Well, first off, digital literacy is absolutely essential these days.
I think I've heard that somewhere before.
Things like AI, programming, and data analysis are becoming increasingly important in pretty much every industry now, from healthcare and finance to education and even the arts.
So even if you're not planning on becoming a software engineer, having at least a basic understanding of those digital tools is crucial.
Totally. It's becoming the new baseline for navigating the professional world. But it's not just about technical skills. Being able to solve complex problems is another super valuable skill that employers are looking for.
So being able to think critically, break down complex situations, and come up with innovative solutions. Sounds like adaptability is key here.
You got it. And this actually leads nicely into another crucial area, sales and marketing.
Okay, interesting.
In today's digital world, businesses need people who can connect with their customers online, build strong relationships, and tell stories that really resonate.
So even if you're not in a traditional sales role, having those strong communication and persuasion skills is a major asset.
Absolutely. And of course, we can't forget about the good old-fashioned interpersonal skills. Communication, leadership, and teamwork. These are sometimes called soft skills, but let me tell you, they're incredibly important for success in any field.
I think we all know that one person who's a fantastic listener, who's super empathetic towards their colleagues, and who can handle even the trickiest conflicts with grace and calmness, those qualities are pure gold in any workplace, no matter what you do.
You're so right. And I'd add one more to the mix: flexibility. This goes beyond simply being able to adapt to change. It's about being open to new ideas, willing to step outside your comfort zone, and viewing learning as a lifelong adventure.
So it's not about reaching some kind of finish line. It's more about embracing that mindset of continuous growth and development.
Exactly.
It's exciting, for sure, but maybe a little intimidating too, right?
It can be, but ultimately it's incredibly empowering to know that we have the power to shape our own futures by constantly investing in ourselves and learning new things.
That's so true. I mean, it really is powerful. But I bet some people listening are thinking, okay, this all sounds great, but how do I actually make this happen? There's just so much information out there. It can feel totally overwhelming.
Oh, definitely. It's easy to feel overwhelmed. A good place to start, I think, is by setting realistic goals. Don't try to learn everything at once or become an expert overnight.
Right. So break down those big, ambitious goals into smaller, bite-sized pieces.
Exactly. Think about learning a new language. You wouldn't expect to be fluent after just a couple of lessons, would you?
No way. Takes time.
Yeah. You start with the basics, build a solid foundation, and then gradually work your way up from there.
That makes sense.
And this is actually where finding a mentor can be super helpful.
Yeah, mentor.
Yeah, or just someone who's already mastered the skill you're trying to learn.
Okay, yeah.
They can give you personalized guidance, feedback, that kind of thing. And they can help you stay motivated and focused on your goals.
Having that kind of guide, someone who's already walked that path, would be amazing. But what if you don't have access to a mentor? Are there other options?
Oh, for sure. There are tons of resources available nowadays, online forums and communities can be really great.
Oh yeah, I've heard of those.
You can connect with other people who are learning the same things you are, ask questions, share resources, get support.
It's like crowdsourcing your learning journey.
Yeah.
I love that idea. Okay, so we've set our goals, we've found some guidance, and now we're ready to get started. What's the most important thing we need to do to be successful?
Practice. I know it sounds obvious, but it's honestly where so many people struggle.
Really?
Yeah, you can't just passively absorb information, like watching videos or reading articles, and expect to master a skill. You have to actually roll up your sleeves and put what you're learning into practice.
It's like exercising a muscle,
Yeah.
right? The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
That's a great analogy. And just like with exercise, consistency is key when it comes to building new skills. Even if you can only dedicate a small amount of time each day, it'll make a huge difference in the long run.
So it's about finding ways to incorporate practice into our daily routines in a way that feels sustainable.
Exactly. Maybe you listen to a podcast on your commute, or read a professional development book for a few minutes before bed, or spend an hour working on a coding project. Just find what works for you and make it a habit.
Those little consistent actions really do add up.
You bet. And I think it's important to remember that building new skills is not about reaching some kind of finish line. It's an ongoing process. The world is always changing, and our learning should be too.
So it's about embracing that growth mindset of always learning, always being curious, always challenging ourselves to learn new things.
Precisely. There's a real beauty in that constant evolution. It keeps things interesting and keeps us engaged with the world around us, and that to me is super exciting.
I completely agree. And it makes all the effort totally worth it.
Yeah.
I love that. That sense of always discovering something new and growing as a person. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But one thing that I hear a lot from people is, I just don't have the time to learn new stuff. Life is so busy, and it's easy to put learning on the back burner.
Oh yeah, for sure. Time is definitely something we all struggle with, but I think the key is to remember that even small chunks of time can make a difference.
You don't need to block off hours and hours every day to learn.
Not at all. It's more about shifting our perspective and finding those little opportunities throughout the day where we can sneak in a little bit of learning.
So instead of trying to find big blocks of time, it's more about being intentional with the little bits of time we have here and there.
Exactly. Maybe it's listening to an educational podcast while you're commuting, or reading a few pages of a book about something you want to learn before you go to bed.
Or even like spending 15 minutes on Duolingo or something.
Exactly. It all adds up.
Little by little. A little becomes a lot.
Right. You got it. And another thing I think is super helpful is to try to connect the things you're learning to your passions and interests.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Like if you're learning something new for work, but you're not super excited about it, maybe try to find a way to tie it into a hobby or something you already enjoy. It'll make it way more fun and engaging.
I like that. So for instance, if you're learning about data analysis for your job, but you're also like a huge foodie, you could try applying those data analysis skills to, say, analyzing recipes or something like that.
That's such a great example. It's about finding those connections that make learning feel less like a chore and more like a natural part of who you are.
I love it. Well, Sarah, this has been such a great conversation. We've covered so much ground today. I feel like I've learned a ton, and I hope our listeners have too. Any final thoughts you want to leave us with?
Just to embrace the journey of lifelong learning. It's full of possibilities for growth, discovery, and ultimately a more fulfilling life.
That's a fantastic takeaway. Thanks again for joining me today, Sarah. It's always a pleasure chatting with you.
Thanks for having me.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into building new skills. We hope you found it helpful and inspiring. Remember, no matter where you are in your learning journey, there's always something new to discover and a new skill to master. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more insightful discussions and deep dives into all sorts of fascinating topics. Thanks for listening.